Okay. Good evening, everyone. I am Rotaract Tanish Jain, the Public Relations Officer of the Rotaract Club of NM College. I'll be your host for the session. Before we begin, I would like to inform you that the session will be recorded and uploaded on a social media platform to spread awareness about the cause. Our initiative, B-YOU-Tiful, aims at spreading awareness around mental health, discouragement of self-harm and suicide, destigmatizing therapy in modern Indian society, and suggesting measures to adopt a more positive mindset. We are conducting this session with the four of you because you are distinctive personalities who have defined themselves in the field of psychology and have acquired knowledge about human well being, unlike the Indian uncles forwarding messages on WhatsApp. Your expertise in the field is of real value to the youth. We believe that this session will be a quintessential way to empower and educate people everywhere and also lead to more illuminating conversations about mental health and its importance. I would now like to introduce our panelists. Ms. Maitri Thanawala Kanabar is counseling psychologist with over 9.5 years of experience. She works with children, adolescents, and young adults through their emotional distress, anxiety. She works at Jupiter Hospital, next school, and has a private practice based outside of Mumbai. Ms. Kunjam Khurana is the founder of Psychoappetite. She is a certified career counselor and aspiring clinical psychologist. She is currently interning with the company named Mind Solace and has also started her own initiative called Psych Appetite, where she provides basic information about psychology and nutrition and helps people connect with certified psychology professionals at a decent price. She is an exceptional student with a two-time national prize winner for her paintings. She finds her interest in psychology and research. Ms. Zarina Poonawala is an award-winning certified intelligent leadership coach, emotional intelligence practitioner, life coach, peak performance coach, celebrity coach, executive coach, NLP, CBT, and educator. She is the founder of Abzo Expertise, unique, which constantly thrives on learning and evolving to benefit individuals, leaders, stakeholders, and organizing worldwide. She has also been conferred with awards and recognitions such as Women's Excellence Award in Leadership Contribution and Iconic Women Creating Better Lives. She is the host of podcasts like The Life Manifesto with Zarina Poonawala and Kaam Ki Baat Zarina Ke Saath. Ms. Bhumika Jain is a counseling psychologist, graphologist, and NLP practitioner. She is the founder of The Desi Therapist, an online platform for creating awareness on mental health. She has provided counseling sessions to teenagers and adults, teenagers and children, and adult skill development, and conducted mental health workshops for over 10,000 children. She specializes in dealing with depression and anxiety, stress management, adolescent and teen issues, motivation, anger management, relationship issues, and behavioral issues. I would now like to brief you about how this will work. I will ask a question, and we would appreciate if each one of you would answer the question sequentially. With your permission, can we begin? Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Sure.
The first question is, what inspired you to pursue a career in mental health, especially in a time with far lesser advancement in the field than there is now? Miss Maithili, if you could go first.
Okay. So I think for me, it was just an instinctive call. I was introduced to psychology in college, and from what I remember, it just like struck a chord with me. It was extremely interesting. I would hate and I would want to bunk all other lectures, but I would like literally be a nerd when it came to that. Sit on the first bench and try to. I I felt like I was seeking it out, and when I aimlessly went into doing masters also, I think, and with not so much of guidance, listening to myself. And then when I interned, as a part of my course, I worked with young children who came from very distressful backgrounds. And I think that moment when I spent like about a month with the same child, I could see the power of just listening. I didn't know so much therapy at that point, but just the power of listening, being there, seeing the dramatic shift in someone's life because of your presence, was, I think, my calling. And nothing else mattered. I knew there was stigma around it, but I don't think that ever deterred me from making this decision. So I think that's how my journey started. I hope that answers your question. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that did. Miss Bhumika, you can go next.
Yeah. So firstly, I would like to thank everyone for having me here. And for me, I think when I was in 11th standard, I realized that what my personality type is like. I always knew, obviously we didn't know the jargons then, but I knew that I'm a social person. I would like to interact. And, I am someone who really likes to, who's an extrovert by personality. So I thought that, imagine if I love to analyze and problem and solve everyone's problem, wouldn't be amazing if I could read minds. So back then, obviously, I didn't know that psychology can't read minds. Psychologists can't read minds. And I was like, okay, if someone is walking, I would know what the person is thinking. So that was one of the factor. And the fact that, it's a very much related to human, that how that I think when I was in 11, that's the knowledge that I had. But since then, so that was like the inner calling. And secondly, it was always that I wanted to educate people. And it wasn't only importance of mental health. Back then, again, the term mental health wasn't used so much even by our psychology professors. But again, I had it in my mind that mental health, and it wasn't only mental health, but say self-love, and so that they can understand, people can understand each other's struggles and to deal with their emotions, and to feel empowered. So I truly believe that the vulnerability is strength, and that's what driven me to do this. And that's what all mattered to me at that point of time. So yeah.
And that was really good listening to you. Miss Zarina, you can go next.
Hi, and thank you so much, Tanish, for the amazing introduction that you have done for everybody. Now, let me quickly give you an idea. I honestly think my profession chose me. I didn't choose my profession, because there was a time in life when I think we all come from backgrounds where we were not very clear about what mental health is. We haven't talked so much about it. There's an issue at home, people say, "Ha, theek ho jayega, sleep over it." Or, you need to wake up early. You know how all Indian parents just give you this one solution for everything: wake up early. So I guess we all come from that background. So technically, I'd say my profession chose me. I didn't choose my profession. I started off with a lot of work in trainings, and then I realized the need for understanding stress, anxiety, mental health issues, and I started working with a lot of cognitive behavioral therapy. So I realized then that people lack emotional intelligence. They lack the simplicity of understanding that life doesn't have to be as complicated as they've made it to be. And I think the pressure of living as per other people's standards has created so much of a mental health issue for all of us. So yeah, basically it's been about 14 years, and I like to help people who help themselves. So I think mental health is all about that, and also breaking those stigmas and stereotypes and barriers that come with it. And I guess we are getting to a point where we are having more conversations. We are making it sort of public, and in every household, it is okay to speak about a little bit of therapy or psychology, or the need to talk to somebody. So yes, that's basically my background.
That was so good hearing about how you started and how your profession chose you. Miss Kunjam, you can go next.
Okay, first of all, thank you to have me here. And I would rather say that I am still in the process. I'm still learning to be a perfect, I won't say a psychologist, because being a psychologist, even after your certifications are done, your degree is done, it is entire different process from there as well. Since I was 5, I guess I wanted to be a cardiologist. And in my 11th standard, I realized that science was actually neat. Preparing for the NEET was not exactly what I wanted to do. And I had a subject, psychology, and that's the very first time I had read about the subject, or had experienced about this. And it is really like it was 2017, 2016, 17, and that was the time the subject also had a boom. Like everybody wanted to enroll into psychology at that time. And I remember we went on a trip to the psychic center in my city, and that's where I saw how the process works, and that's when I knew that yes, I want to do this. And so in my 11th standard itself, I had joined a school for special children, and I have been working ever since. And it's just, you just know that you belong here. That is how I chose this field. That's it.
Yeah. That was so wonderful about how you still help those children with special needs. Moving ahead, while we have made great strides in the field of mental health awareness in recent years, there is still a large amount of stigma still present in and around the topic. What are some ways in which all of us can help destigmatize therapy and mental health, specifically in Indian society? It would be great if Miss Bhumika could go first. Ma'am,
Sorry, I was on unmute. Now I'm audible?
Yes.
Yeah. So firstly, I would say that we have to start with educating people. A lot of the stigma exists due to the unawareness about mental health. And it's still an alien concept, especially with the older generation. I'm not saying, I'm not labeling anyone, but still the awareness due to the lack of digital exposure, if we compare as compared to the gens, the current generation, say the age bracket, say from 15 to 40, so it's lesser in older population. And again, since the word mental health didn't even exist back then, so secondly, mental health education in schools should be made compulsory. Instead of, I remember again having a subject known as value education, and it was one of the most, it was a class where I think the whole class used to bunk together and play games like bingo or just making fun of each other, not even attending to what was taught in value education. So I think instead of, I'm not trying to change the education system, but I personally feel after conducting also workshops about mental health related to all the topics that covers in mental health, children nowadays, they are much more, aware of what's happening in reality. And they are very much keen in listening about mental health. So I think this is something that can be made a compulsion. And if children know and learn about it from the beginning, it will help them not only to ask for help, but also be there for other people when they emotionally need them. And secondly, be judgment free. A lot of time I have heard teens and even young adults for that matter that, no, I don't want to say this. I don't want to behave in such a way. I don't want to put my point across. What if people judge me? So the thing of being judged all the time, it stops you from what you are. And if we impart this knowledge from the beginning, so I think people can be themselves and they will not have to wear a mask and increase the, an internal conflict between what they are and what they want to be. And I also believe that we as a country and as a government too, we need to put in more effort and attention building the mental health infrastructure that we want to spread it across a large scale. Along with this, social media and platforms, which I personally observed in the last 2 years, also need to be more careful and more sensitive towards the content that they put in. I don't want to again label anyone here, but there are a lot of influencers, and we know how influencers influence a lot of people out there. So if influencers are aware what they're putting out, they are so concrete in the terms of content that they prepare, I feel they should be very careful when it comes to talking about mental health. You can't just, cleaning doesn't mean OCD, right? So you can't just make a video that I am I have OCD just because I'm into too much of cleaning. So that's, I think, something. And very recently on Instagram, there's this one song where people talk about personalities. Okay, so I think again, one of the influencers with good number of following I'm talking about, she is just, putting out the disorders, the personality disorders with certain kind of personalities, which is not even supported by something. So I think giving out wrong information to the audience, it's not the right way to talk about mental health. And a lot can also trigger people when it comes across stigmatizing mental health and disorders. So yes, the amount of stigma that has gone down, but the pace is definitely something that needs to be increased. And every one of us can make a difference simply by knowing that the mental illness is not anyone's fault, no matter what the societal stigma says. So yeah, that's what I have to say. I'm sorry if I went a little longer.
No, it's all right. It's all right. And we actually, that is what we believe in. That is why the name of our project is B-YOU-Tiful, because no one is flawed actually. Miss Zarina,
Yeah,
we
I
would like
agree with you.
use next.
So, Bhumika, I completely agree with her on everything she has said. And I also have to say that, Bhumika, you have a wonderful voice. You know, the way you project yourself, your voice is fantastic. I'll tell you this thing, mental health, unfortunately, we started talking about it recently, and we focus on maybe millennials, we focus on the, the newer generation, because they're the ones who are making this conversation more public. Okay, as compared to the older generation. But let me tell you that women suffer depression, or they go through this entire postpartum depression that you've heard of, and that's about 20% of women. 95% millennials between the age of 18 and 34, they're suffering from severe stress, and severe stress leads to anxiety. Anxiety is a general anxiety disorder. It could lead to panic attacks, etc. It could lead to depression. So it can become kind of chronic in different manners, right? Similarly, you have employees and corporates suffering from stress and anxiety. And then that is what leads to all those mental health issues. That's about, say, 45% of our population. And literally, 1 in every 5 individuals is suffering from stress at this point in time. So I think the conversation about mental health as an umbrella is massive, but it must start with stress and anxiety being the center stage, simply because each person is going through that bit. Because it's the concept of simple stress in terms of, I see a 4-year-old kid also saying, I'm stressed because I have to attend Zoom classes, So the idea of firstly not using words loosely. So I agree with Bhumika on the fact that Instagram or influencers do not understand the importance or the depth, the intensity of certain disorders, syndromes, words in general. And so even stress must not be used as loosely as we do. We need to understand that these words have a meaning. It's as good as telling somebody that I have fever, or I have cancer, or I have, say I've broken a limb and I need to get myself a physiotherapist. So these are terms that need to be given the same amount of weightage and the same amount of importance. Until and unless that doesn't happen, and people use these terms very loosely in their, usual lives. For example, depression. When you talk about depression, you have somebody who's just going to wake up one day and say, hey, my boyfriend broke up with me, I'm depressed today. But there is a difference between being temporarily sad, having a little phase, being upset, and then being depressed. There are people who are genuinely suffering from depression for plenty of years, many, many years, and they aren't able to get over it. So it's important to first identify the core of mental health, and I think that would be stress and anxiety to a large extent. And the other part is being able to know the difference between these terms so that you don't loosely use them. I guess that's how we can actually make it a little more serious and a proper conversation as such.
Thank you, ma'am, for sharing your views on the topic. Miss Kunjam, we would like to hear your views on the same.
Sure. First of all, I would agree to whatever ma'ams before me said, but I will just like to add a little point over there. India has its roots from mental health. If people focus on reading on Bhagavad Gita or have heard of the story of Mahabharata, Krishna acted as a therapist to Arjuna. There are, I suppose, 19 chapters, and each chapter in the Bhagavad Gita explains a therapy session. In the first and the second chapter, Arjuna explains to Krishna whatever the issues he has, the problem he has, and Krishna, only by talking to him, that is what we use these days, talk therapy. Talking to him shows him a path for going forward, right? Now, this is something which is in our roots. We have it. But due to a lot of pseudo-psychologists and babas, babis, I am not pinpointing out anybody, but yes, due to these false information, somewhere we have lost that essence that we had from our ancestors, right? So basically, how can we as a psychologist or practicing psychologist make a change, create awareness, is actually, I believe that people who are not associated to this field should not post about it, should not talk about it as a professional. If you have recently witnessed a book speaking about mental health and psychology, for instance, on Instagram, on LinkedIn, after I have observed, majorly the turning point over here was Sushant Singh's Rajput incident, right? That was the point. Many pseudo-psychologists came up on Instagram providing people for therapy, and they were not even certified, right? Even for a psychologist to be a psychologist, it takes years of training. It takes 3 years of bachelor's, 2 years of master's, 2 years of MPhil, and after MPhil, they start learning into the practical world, right? After masters, they get a counseling act. So that is the amount of education that is required. So seriousness of the thing. And these pseudo psychologists do some research, the major topics, just like ma'am said right now, depression. So the majors which are being used these days, and then they use it and they have a nice number of following. So people here, because it is a general tendency that an individual wants himself or herself to be right. So if they on a platform are claiming to listen to their problems, an individual is vulnerable enough to go to them and actually seek help from them. But even if they are doing that in a goodwill, they do not realize that they are doing more harm than good. Instead of this, what I have seen in my college, my organization, and since the COVID, people from the background of psychology, students from the background of psychology, have started many initiatives of sharing the things that they are learning, which would help in making people aware of what topics are, what depression actually is, what stress actually is, or why only stress or depression, even the major disorders, what they are actually. And that is what I think is kind of an initiative, and that might be something that may come up by other universities as well in the future, and that may help people to have a greater knowledge about the subject, and also to identify between who is a pseudo-psychologist and who actually is a certified person, and the person could seek help from. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am, with whatever knowledge you've shared about the Gita and Mahabharata in, relation with therapy and psychology. Miss Medley, we would like to hear you go next.
Yes, I think firstly, even I want to tell Kunjam that I loved how she enmeshed, the Hindu mythology with, using that as an analogy. That was beautiful. And both Zarina and Bhumika have pretty much covered everything I would say about, how we can make things better around mental health. I think the biggest way to, remove stigma from anything would be to talk about it and not, be hush about it and treat it as if it were a taboo. So this event, this initiative that you all have taken is a step towards trying to, stamp out the stigma around mental health. And I think, like they mentioned about, awareness, proper knowledge about and information about psychology, mental health, mental illnesses. This, like being very careful about what you're sharing, being informed, being authentic, right? And I think one of the biggest things is reaching out to schools and schools taking up the initiative of talking about mental health, and not just emotional literacy, but also understanding what mental illnesses could mean, right? So teachers, parents, children are able to identify that, in themselves or people around them. I think that's very, very critical. In fact, like just before this, I had a session where this is an adult who's telling me that I don't know how to deal with my emotions. And there are 2-year-olds who have techniques of, like blow a candle, act like you're blowing a candle to calm yourself down, and this adult is going into this whole self-blame mode that, I don't know anything, I'm so dumb. And there are these 2-year-olds, 5-year-olds who know what to do with their emotions, right? So I think empowering people with knowledge, with techniques, with understanding. One other thing is I'm going to like go to the other side. Now I feel through COVID, obviously social media became a crazy rage, and pop psychology has taken over like never before. And now it's become cool to talk about mental health, right? It's become very cool that, I am pro mental health. I don't know how many people are authentically understanding what it is that they're advocating for, right? And like they said, they loosely use the term OCD, depression, and I'm a narcissist, and things like that. They need to understand that there are people on the other side who probably are going through this and are suddenly thinking that, oh, you know what, who cares? I am, like this person there is also going through this, I'm going through it. It's all good, so it's sort of somewhere I feel now adding a roadblock in people reaching out for help, because they're not understanding what impact it is having on people around them, to their own growth, their own life. So I feel this whole coolness is helping to talk about it, but I feel it's taking it to another extreme now where it's cool to have a problem. And if there isn't, you're trying to, dig out one, flesh out a problem in your mental health. And mental health is not just, I'm not just thinking of it as well-being, like your physical well-being, where you're balanced, where you're emotionally stable-ish for most part of your life or day. But I'm also talking about mental illness. That is where the biggest, I think, stigma comes in, that, I hear sounds, I cannot stop crying, I am unable to bring myself out of bed and go to work every single day. When that is happening, there's nobody talking about those things. Everybody's just talking about journaling, breathing, talk to your friends, exercise, which is, I think these are pillars of mental health, good mental well-being, but there's barely any information about these things. So I sincerely appreciate you guys. I appreciate even influencers who do live, Instagram lives or Facebook lives, YouTube lives, where they bring in people who can provide authentic knowledge and information about this, right? So I guess such initiatives would probably help us reduce the stigma, because you're talking more about it. And the more you talk about something, you become more familiar. So it's no longer bad and traumatic. Right? So yes, I think that would be all.
I really liked the talk, the part where he called out having problem as to being cool with the Gen Z generation. Okay, so moving ahead, in occurrence with today's theme, World Suicide Prevention Day, how can we reach out to someone who has attempted or is capable of self-harm? Miss Zarina, you being a life coach, we would like to hear your views about it first.
Uh, all right. One thing that I really think is important in this is not the person who's actually attempting suicide, but the people around him or her. They have a massive role to play in such a situation. See, a person going through that kind of a turmoil and that kind of trauma in their minds, they are not in the frame of mind to come and say, hey, I want help. So help me. I don't want to commit suicide, but I feel like it. They're not going to come and tell you that. Okay. You have to be able to identify it. But the problem is, we have this mentality of shoving things under the carpet till the dirt becomes big enough for us not to be able to even vacuum it out. So when somebody's telling their parent that they're feeling like this, the parents have a very different reaction. Very few of them will actually take the effort and say, hey, something's going on. Let's talk about it, or let's find somebody to talk about it with. You probably are feeling like this. Now the point is, sometimes you have to say it's okay to feel like this and help the person overcome it. What most people try and do is, you're not supposed to feel like this, but how do you stop feelings, right? You can say that stop loving this person, but you can't stop loving somebody. You can't stop being angry. You can't stop emotions. The emotions are just such a natural part of you that you can't stop them. So what you need to do is, I think the education part we were talking about here has to be with parents, has to be with spouses, in general partners, because that is where we're missing. See, when a woman is going through this whole phase of becoming a mom, and then after that suddenly her life's changing, she needs the support. She needs a support system, an ecosystem that understands her. Okay, a man is going to work every day, he's experiencing burnout, he's exhausted, and that exhaustion can lead to many other things. So he needs the support of not having a whiny household. If a child is saying, I'm not good with my studies, I'm not getting the marks, parents need to stop putting that kind of pressure. Nobody is saying don't ask them to perform, but at the same time, the performance is not supposed to take away somebody's life. You have to be able to identify the difference there. So I think a massive role played here is not about the person, Tanish, who's going through this situation, but the people around him or her who can actually help them to understand that, okay, it's okay, you feel like this, I may have felt like this when I was your age, let's figure this out, let's see what we can do. So I guess it starts somewhere there where you empathize and then you kind of help the other person a little more compassionately instead of just shoving it under the rug. That's all.
That was so enlightening about actually educating parents as well. Okay, Miss Kunjam, we would like to hear you next.
Um, basically what I have seen is that a person don't impulsively take a decision to take their lives, right? If there's something wrong, they will first of all try everything in their capacity to make it right. That's what we have been taught mostly in Indian homes, that you can fix it on yourself. You don't have to showcase your weakness throughout the world, right? So the person tries his level best. I'll make this happen. If that does not happen, the first person, the first individual he or she reaches out is to the friend circle, because they are of the same age. They might understand that I am failing into this. They might have a solution, right? And 9 out of 10 people who are actually in this depressed mode, they do reach out. They do reach out to their friends, and if they don't get an answer, they eventually do also show symptoms, or also say things to their parents like mujhse nahi ho raha. They won't actually come up and say that I want to end it up, but they will use certain lines which a parent, if been taught about this before, or if the friend circle been taught about this before, can identify, right? These people also try and contact helplines. There are a number of suicide helplines that are actually active, and they have also seen a boom within the COVID period. And this I know because I have volunteered into some, and people try to reach out. They try to find that one hope, that there should be one thing that I get that one hope to stick to the decision that I want to live. Because nobody wants to end their life. It's roughly like that. So here what is important is again providing for people to provide suicide intervention help. Now here Instagram, LinkedIn, these things come into place. Social media is the new in. Everybody is on social media, whether it is an elderly person or a teenager. Teenagers can see these help, these small pointers one can pick out. They can learn it from programs held by school, initiatives held by school. And even schools these days are taking these initiatives, but majorly as a student, if we were asked to sit into a lecturer hall, mostly 99% I would say we are just happy that we get to miss our classes, and we would talk about our gossip about our lives happening and would not pay attention to. So first thing, they need such interventions to provide information to how to deal with people, how to pick up these points, and also to make that interesting for the school audience or the college level audience. And coming to the elderly population, they can be reached out by providing such workshops, such interventions, or maybe on social media. And influencers can play a bit of a role over here, because basic suicide prevention training can be given to anybody. And if they really want to come up with a change or get people influenced, they can take that training. It is not limited to the psychology professionals or the mental health professionals. Anybody can take that training. It hardly takes, I guess, a week or so, and you get the basics. And secondly, I would say, if a person reaches out to you and if you feel something like that, don't ever tell that person that things will be all right and just focus on something else right now. The person has actually exhausted all his efforts and has not reached to a point till now, and then you tell that person to focus on somewhat else. The mind cannot focus on somewhere else when there's a constant failure or sense of weakness surrounding your thoughts. So that is some basics that needs to be more generalized and more put light upon, I would say. And yes, there should not be only one suicide prevention day in throughout a year. I believe it should be a regular thing, because suicide does not only happen on one single day. So I believe this should have more light upon.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for your illuminating words and suggesting measures to educate people of all ages. Miss Maitri, we would like to hear you next.
Yes. I pretty much resonate with what both of them have already said, I think it's very, very critical for us to listen to what is not even directly said to us, so being a little more perceptive when you start noticing changes in somebody's behavior or performance, involvement, levels of mood, noticing such minute things is very, very critical, I think. And all that would probably help that person at that point is knowing that there's someone who can listen to them without telling them, oh my God, if you do this, तो मेरा क्या होगा? इसके बारे में तुमने सोचा, इसका क्या होगा, right? That person who is thinking of self-harm or has attempted suicide in the past already is feeling miserable, is feeling guilty about those people or those things that he or she would have had to leave behind. And when you say that, you're shutting them down to you as well, right? So important to avoid saying that. I think another key thing here is that when someone is going through this, we are very afraid, okay? Just like I feel like this is very similar to sex education. We're very afraid to talk about it because we feel कि अगर मैंने बोल दिया ये, तो ये हो जाएगा, right? So in fact, in therapy, one of the first things we are trained to do is to check for this, you know, that do you have thoughts of harming yourself? Do you sometimes feel that this pain ends, you know, if life ends? So talking about these things in different ways does not make a person want to get up and go and end their life. This is in fact what I said earlier about, you know, destigmatize by talking about it. The minute I talk to somebody who's contemplating ending their lives about this, I ask them directly, they feel that, oh, she at least gets me. You know, she was able to talk about it and I'm so afraid to even bring this up. And that probably opens up a channel for that person to be able to trust it, right? Very, very critical, if possible, to go for, you know, help, for some professional help. If somebody you know is going through this, it's very important. Another thing you can do as a family member or a loved one is to create a safety plan. Okay, that's something we do in therapy with people who are contemplating suicide. A safety plan is basically listing down or developing, you know, like a list of people I can reach out to when I start thinking this. What are the things I can do to distract myself? Who is the person I can call? Can I go down for a walk? Something that you and that person sit together and put down, you know. So whenever they have these thoughts, they're not lost and not overwhelmed by it, right? Another big thing is medication. There are some psychiatric medications that have a side effect of, you know, increasing this tendency. So it's important to make people aware who are put on these medications that you need to be a little more wary about the kind of thoughts you get, be prepared, informing the family members or immediate caretakers about this. So yeah, and I think avoid criticizing, you know, like she said earlier that, you know, how can you think about this? It's literally understanding the why of the behavior, you know. It's not that suicide is their answer to solve problems. They are unable to solve it, so they want to end their lives. So it's so important to understand what is it that is driving them to, you know, think about this, contemplate ending their lives. So yeah, and I feel like generally as a community, all of us need to be a little more compassionate towards each other, even regardless of whether you know people or not. Just when you're walking down the road, you know, try and be compassionate. You really don't know what someone's, you know, going through and how they're holding themselves together. So yes.
Thank you, ma'am, for your share on the topic about compassion and having a safety plan with a friend or a loved one. Ms. Bhumika, we would like to hear your thoughts on the same.
So I think Kunjam and the other panelists, you know, Mithali, and I remember the surname of Zarina, right? So I would say whatever they've mentioned, they've beautifully put it across. And I think whatever information was needed, they've covered most of it. I would just like to I would just say that don't start by asking them why they did and what they did. You know, when Mithali mentioned that you can't just, you need to understand the reasoning behind it. You need to understand why is the person behaving, why the person is having such kind of thoughts. So by understanding, you can't just go and ask them this. And in fact, you know, they may feel attacked if we put so many questions on them, because they are not in a very stable mindset. If they would be able to process information, they would know the difference between what is right and what is wrong. Because at that point of time, they are so overwhelmed that they are not able to process and understand that what should be the conclusion like. And they may also feel judged about whatever action or steps or thoughts that they are going through. Also, be gentle, what she said. Make sure that you show utmost support and care and give them the space that they need. And if you feel that someone who's capable of, again, self-harm, try to seek understanding. Don't dismiss them, and don't ask them to make promises of never doing it again. So that's one thing, because this may lead to lie to you about them. You have to give them the very safe space, which is very, very important. Again, what she mentioned, even during our sessions, we don't give, okay, this is what you can't instruct them, this is what they're supposed to do, and you can't expect them to make promises, because they need to feel, okay, I'm in this comfortable zone and this is a very comfortable space and I can be myself over here. Try to normalize it and tell them that it's okay. Also promise them that you will not discuss with these people. So very important thing that we respect, that in when we start with our counseling sessions, first is confidentiality. So I think this is something that we need to take care of, that because again, what Methali mentioned about the safety or the sheet. So at that time only we can also make sure that the person, whatever the person is sharing, it's only going to be between these four walls and you and me. So I think the person feels more comfortable to actually get it out from their system, and this will help them feel assured and secure. Again, offer them help and find the support that they might need. And or also what we can do is give them the reference for professional help, obviously, or go with them for the sessions while you can wait outside. That could be one of the things. And ask them what you can do further, and remind them that they are we are going to be there with you throughout. So I think the being emotionally available is equally important if you are being physically available as well. That's it from my end.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for your views on the topic about how someone plays an important role in others' mental health. That they need constant support, and how we should be there with them throughout the whole therapy process that they might go through. So moving ahead, I would like to, this is the last question that I'd like to put forth. There are people who are skeptical about attending therapy and tend to disregard their mental health. How do you ease them into the process of therapy? Miss Kunjam, we would like to hear your thoughts.
I would say people, as far as I have observed, 2 pointers are there in India. Basically, first point is about confidentiality. How can I go and speak about my life to a complete unknown individual? And what if they tell it to somebody else? This is the first pointer. And second pointer which comes in, this is a mentality that I am just talking. Why should I pay for it? So I can talk to anybody. They will just talk to me. So why should I go for therapy? These are the major 2 pointers. Obviously, there is lack of information that will always be there. But these days, people know about a psychologist. There are major people are on Instagram, social media, and they know what a psychologist is, what a psychologist does. And if they majorly encounter difficulties, they prefer going to a psychiatrist rather than a psychologist, because psychologist only provides you with a talk therapy, and majorly people think that it is not a solution to their problems. Now what happens is, bringing them, you cannot first of all bring anybody to a psychologist. They should in themselves have a will to be perfect, to get good. Not perfect, obviously nobody's perfect. So get good, get their health good. Once they have this will inside that yes, they can go out, they can talk to somebody about it, that is when they take the first step towards their own preferably good mental health, right? So obviously you can on your hand just provide the person with the information that yes, this is the person. They make sure that the information you're sharing, in despite of certain circumstances, majorly the information is kept confidential, and the places where the confidentiality has to be broken, that is informed well in the first session as well. So that happens when the person comes to a therapy session, and that's when the trust bond is built, right? For bringing that person to the therapy session, nobody can bring the person to a therapy session until and unless the person himself wants to help himself. So that is something I believe into, and I think there would be a more of a spike in the coming years in the field of psychology, because even if you see after COVID, there has been a rise into the even into the patients, and also into the information that is being provided throughout. And as everything has turned into online, people are now understanding the importance of taking care of their mental health and everything associated to that spectrum. So I believe, and I really wish that there will be one day when, if a person is just feeling a little stressed, every person, just like they have their pediatrician, every person has their family doctor, they might also have a family psychologist. So yeah.
Thank you so much, ma'am. I really liked about having a family psychologist, because I believe that that is something that should be normalized. Next up, we'd like to hear from Miss Maithili. I'm sorry.
That's okay. So I think I completely agree with Kunjam, and I don't know if, you guys have seen this meme, which says that I am in therapy to deal with people who should ideally be in therapy, which is very, very true. Like she said, you cannot force someone, you cannot push someone into therapy, because even if they make it to the session, if they are unwilling, if they are not seeking it out, it's really not going to be effective. So you cannot really force someone into therapy. What you could, however, do is go into therapy yourself to understand how to help the person. What is it that I can do to help him or her cope with something, for me to be able to tolerate or handle their anger or their whatever the symptoms are. So that could be one of the options. Obviously, spilling the beans, talking about it, addressing the elephant in the room with the person is extremely important. Where you say that, I have been noticing these changes in you. How do you feel about it? Maybe it takes a little while, but when you regularly have these conversations, and probably if the person is open enough to think and reflect onto, these changes, or they begin, sometimes, I feel like we're all in an autopilot. We don't realize when we're changing, right? So when someone hits the pause button on our life and makes us reflect, we start observing patterns and, behavioral, emotional changes in ourselves. So when you talk to the person and he or she, if they start noticing this, then maybe they might be slightly open to, considering therapy. I also feel that these days there are a lot of brilliant, not the pop psychology books, but there are amazing books which you can help someone start off with, gift people books, like they joke about it, right? That if you think your friend stinks a lot, gift them a perfume, as a hint. So whether you tell them directly or not, gift it to them. Let people read self-help books, because it's not as easy as we feel, for people to acknowledge that there's a problem with me. So maybe, cushion it for them a little and then let them take that call for themselves. Yeah, I mean, I can think of these things as of now.
Thank you, ma'am, for your thoughts on the topic. Ms. Bhumika, we would like to hear you next.
Okay, so I would continue from where Mithali said, Mithali, sorry. Okay, so I will explain you with actually a real life example. I had two clients coming in. It was one client and she came because his, it wasn't for her, it was for his friend. And she mentioned, I don't know how do I go about the whole process. I know that that my friend needs therapy, but he's not ready to join in because he feels hardly it's not going to help him. He's been going through the whole process six months all by himself and nothing has helped. And he had this very inflated ego, and this concept that therapy, just by talking, therapy will not help you in any way. So that was his perception. But then I was as a professional, what I could do from my end at that point of time and actually help was so before we start with any sort of counseling sessions, I give a consultation call to make the understand client about the whole process, that how we are going to have the whole session, and number of sessions that might be needed, the duration, and any other questions that they have. So that kind of call was arranged with the three of us. I was there, the person, the friend who inquired, and the one who might, as per her, who needed therapy. So that if the client himself or herself is not ready to come and inquire and walk in, you can be there for the person by being, as I mentioned in my previous answer as well, be emotionally and physically available. And that person was there throughout the whole process. I understand this is not our offline sessions happening currently to that level, but since we have the advantage of an online sessions, you can be with the person and show the emotional support, and again tell the person that you are there for them, you are there to listen. But again, getting a professional help is always a better idea, because it can help you in longer way. You can also share your examples. I'm not talking when therapy starts, before the therapy process actually starts. Even the friend, we can have like a call before, and even the friend would know, okay, I have to be watchful of these words, I have to frame my sentences in such a way, so that we need to make sure there's nothing that can trigger the person is actually coming in for therapy. So we have to be very careful in terms of the sentences that we frame, and again being sensitive with the time and the place you choose. As I said, we have to be very careful of the triggering points, and bombarding them with the advice in front of a lot of people can actually hurt them and make them feel cornered. Offer to help them by letting them know that you are finding a therapist, and guide them through the entire process, as I explained with a real life example just now. Also, you can also show them that yes, I am doing the research. If the whole process of finding the right therapist for you is becoming overwhelming, you as a friend could do the whole thing, and shortlist various professionals and give them the information that they might need. Again, don't force it on them, give it as a suggestion, and show that you are there for them. Expect resistance and them saying no to you, which is very much possible, but you have to make sure that you are there for them. That's what you promised yourself, right? That if my friend needs it, I will be there for my friend. So that's one thing you have to keep again in mind. And you can also offer to go to therapy when we have the offline options, and sit outside and wait for them if they're hesitant to go alone. That's all you can do. And above all, I think show them the continued love throughout this process. If the therapy also begin, it doesn't mean that you're going to just lose the person. Okay, my part is done. What I was there for, I needed to find the right therapist for my friend, so I'm done here. No, I would say you help your friend throughout the whole process. So I think this would be again taking an initiative and making sure that you are at the right side of the bridge will help you to bridge the whole gap between the two things. That's from my side.
Thank you so much, ma'am. I really liked, when you mentioned that taking care of trigger words and, knowing about them beforehand is so important, so that we can help them in a better manner. Ms. Zarina, I'd like you to go next. Yeah.
Okay. So obviously, I agree with what everybody has said here, but I also feel that, sometimes people are so busy in their own lives that to remove that kind of time and dedication for another person has become very difficult these days. I will tell you two things that come to my mind when I think of therapy or when I think of people seeking help. The first thing is everybody needs help. We don't need to look at it as something that only when somebody is going through, they need to go through therapy. Therapy is a great way, and anything to do with therapy or coaching comes in the category of your self-development, of your growth. It's not necessary that somebody has to go through a problem only to take therapy. They can actually take therapy for understanding, for self-reflection, for being able to develop or, think of their personal growth or find, conflicting thoughts in their mind coming to an end. And that happens to each and every one of us on a daily basis. So the first thing, I think the biggest stigma around therapy is that only people who are troubled need it. The minute we do away with this stigma, so for example, when Bhumika said that, the friend needs to go, I think the friend should also take a session of therapy. So the other person feels that, hey, this is normal. This is something we all can do. It's not because I have a problem, I have to go through it. So in my opinion, I think the first step is to make therapy normalized for each and every person, so that it is not ki problem hai to jao, problem nahi hai to mat jao. You need somebody to talk to. If you, I don't know if you have seen Money Heist, you have a Berlin, which is this character who's giving the best advice to people. And then you have the professor who's executing things for you, right? You see Akbar and Birbal back in history, or you see any, Tudor or a Versailles Empire, you see anybody from history, pick up any politician, pick up any, big entrepreneur, businessman. For example, there is Wahi Takeda. He's the Warren Buffett of Japan, and he's the mentor to a billionaire himself. What does that tell you? It tells you that everybody needs somebody. It's happening since history. It's happening since the beginning of time. Like, for example, Kunjam gave that, that fantastic analogy about the Mahabharata. That's exactly what I'm talking about. There's not a time in history where we don't need somebody to talk to. We don't need counsel, and we don't need help or guidance to understand if we are in a certain direction. So nobody here is talking about instructions. We are talking about simply being able to share our thoughts and just perceive somebody else's point of view. That's what therapy helps you do. So my opinion is therapy is not for troubled souls. It's for everybody. Okay. And the other thing I truly believe is people need to stop using the word therapy in regards to mental health, because that is what refrains people. It's just psychology. I mean, I'm pretty sure these girls know better than I do, because they are actually, from the field. I'm coaching. So, they're all licensed, they're professionals. So they know that we have a reverse psychology. You tell me to do this, I will exactly do the opposite. I don't want to do what you're telling me to do. So let's just not talk about it as therapy and mental health. Let's make it conversations which are more regular. Like, hey, you've got a problem. Let's talk about it. I know this person. I've been going to her. Why don't you go to her too? Maybe she'll help you out. So something like that, I think it has to be a casual approach, but without becoming cool, like Maithili said. So that's my take on it. Let's just make therapy normal and regularized for everybody. Our parents need it. Okay. Our grandparents need it. Our colleagues need it. Our spouses need it. Our children also need counseling. So you see what's happening here. If everybody goes through the process together, you can be better emotionally intelligent and understand each other better. So I think it's a win-win then.
Yes, thank you so much for your thoughts. And I totally like the fact that therapy is not just for troubled people or who is having issues, it's for everyone. Even though mental health is not the elephant in the room anymore, there is still a stigma around it. People still refrain from talking about their true state of mind. The reply to "How are you?" should not automatically be "I'm fine." It should be how you actually feel. We hope that this session empowered you to speak about your mental health truthfully and encouraged you to seek help if you need it. Every conversation has a positive impact. Every discussion is necessary. We would be delighted to hear from you and appreciate any feedback that you could give us regarding today's conversation. On World Suicide Prevention Day, to all those struggling to find a purpose in life and waiting for a chance to give up on it, let's just say ourselves that this is not how my story would end. On that note, we would like to thank you for your involvement and for sparing time to be a part of this endeavor. It wouldn't have had been possible without you. Thank you so much.